This is the story of Carlo Acutis, the Catholic Church's first millennial saint, who sadly died of a serious disease at the age of 15, before he could even get a driver's license. At first glance, Carlo seemed like any other teenager. He loved Nutella, playing with his dog, and playing video games like Super Mario Bros. But Carlo has already been responsible for 2 miracles: healing a boy of a serious birth defect and saving the life of a girl, both after touching his relic. And in 2020, over 41,000 people visited his shrine, and in 2025, Pope Francis will declare Carlo Acutis the first millennial saint. I really want to talk about Carlos' story, not because I'm some religious scholar or because I'm holier than thou, but just because I think his story is really inspiring, especially for a young Catholic like me, because he lived basically in the same era as me. Being born in 1991, he lived through cell phones, video games, and the birth of the early internet. But even as a young child, Carlo was different. At the age of 4, his grandma appeared to him in a dream as an angel, asking for prayers. By age 6, he shined in church class, and by the age of 7, he asked his first Holy Communion. To say that this changed his life would be an understatement. From then on, he attended Mass daily, prayed the Rosary multiple times a day, and before and after Mass had a holy hour, because he believed that the Eucharist was his highway to heaven. Carlos's faith was so strong that it had a big impact on his friends and family. His mother, Antonia, for example, had only attended Mass 3 times before Carlo. But Carlos's faith inspired her to return to going to Mass regularly, and she even enrolled in a theology class. By age 11, Carlo had become fascinated with computers. He taught himself how to code, was building websites for his parish, and gotten so good he was tutoring college students. He even made a website documenting Eucharistic miracles, where the Eucharist might be transformed into living flesh, or other miracles during Mass, showcasing over 182 of them. And this website is incredible. I used it to make this video, and it is such an amazing piece of work. I'm just in disbelief that someone this young could have made this. But regardless, Carlo didn't just spend all of his time building websites. He loved hanging out with his friends, making videos of his dog, and playing video games like Super Mario Bros, Halo, and Pokemon. And when he noticed that he was gaining weight, he actually restricted the amount of time he played video games each week to just an hour. Carlo was known for his kindness. He stood up to bullies, helped classmates with their schoolwork, and made friends with everyone, even the janitors and custodians at his school, many of whom were immigrants and were generally ignored or mistreated by a lot of people. But not Carlo. Carlo went out of his way to make friends with anybody for that matter, and especially people who seemed to be alone at lunch tables or the children of divorced parents who were going through a really hard time. One of Carlos's favorite sayings was that all people are born as originals, but many die as photocopies. And he lived by these words, talking people out of watching porn and despising harassment against women. I know I sound like a broken record, but Carlo stood up for everyone. Carlo had a strong devotion to the Mass and Eucharist. He often said that when we stand before the sun, we get a tan, but when we stand before the Eucharist, we'll become more like saints. He believed that sin was taking our eyes off of the Creator and instead putting our eyes upon created things. And sadness was looking inwards and not outwards about how we can help others. And on that same note, he often wondered why stadiums were full, but church pews were empty. When one of his friends killed a lizard for no reason, he ran home and cried to his mom, and her mom had to console him by saying that the lizard was in heaven with Jesus. And with his first savings, rather than buying the latest Super Mario game, he instead bought a sleeping bag for a homeless person. Despite Carlo being born into a rich family and being able to go on vacation to Paris or London, he instead begged his parents to take him to pilgrimage sites and the Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi, who was his favorite saint. And despite his parents being able to buy him designer clothes, Carlo instead wanted to wear simple Nikes and jackets. Because of all of these things, some kids thought that Carlo was, well, weird. They teased him often and harassed him, and when asked why he never, ever fought back, he said, well, the Lord wouldn't be pleased if I reacted violently. Carlos's strong faith even inspired Rajesh, a family friend and the son of a Hindu Brahmin priest, to convert to Christianity. Rajesh was just blown away that someone like Carlo, someone as rich and handsome as charismatic as him, was such a strong Christian. Carlos's parish priest described Carlo as being unforgettable, always caring, and humble. And because of all of these things, Carlo had a bright future ahead of him. And a lot of people wondered whether he'd be a skilled computer programmer, whether he'd be a priest, or whether he'd be an evangelizer traveling the globe. But when you actually asked Carlo what he wanted to be, he shrugged. And he said, "I don't know. I just want to serve Jesus." And these words would seem inspired because just a few months later, Carlo would get the disease that would end up taking his life. In 2006, Carlo initially thought he had gotten the flu, but it turned out to be leukemia, and his health got really bad really quick. One of the nurses remarked that they had never seen a patient undergo such extreme and sudden pain. Despite this, whenever Carlo was asked how he was feeling, he'd always reply, "Well, as always." And just 30 minutes later, he fell into a coma. Carlo was immediately moved to intensive care and was given a treatment, and it went well. But despite this, he was declared brain dead on October 11, 2006, and his heart would stop beating the next day. Carlos's final words were that he was happy to die because he had not wasted a single moment on anything that was unpleasing to God. Most funerals are sad events, but not Carlo's. Instead, his felt more like a celebration. Friends, family, and people from all walks of life, especially immigrants and homeless people, were there. Many smelled lilies coming from his body. And when the priest finished the mass, the church bells rang. And many took this as a sign that Carlo was in heaven. At first, Carlo was buried in his family tomb, but was later moved to St. Francis of Assisi spot. But after Carlo died, he appeared to his mom as an angel, saying that he would become a saint. But in order for this to happen, he needed to have two miracles that were related to him. The first miracle happened over 9 years later with a young boy named Matthias Viana. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. Basically, he was born with birth defects that meant he had constant vomiting and health problems. Medications hadn't worked, and his family just couldn't afford the surgery to help him. Frankly, they had lost all hope. But on October 12th, the anniversary of Carlos's death, he touched a relic of his. It was instantly healed. Another miracle involved a mother who was concerned for her daughter, who had suffered a serious head injury and was on her way to death in extreme pain. Desperate for help, the mom touched a relic of Carlos onto her daughter, and suddenly the daughter was healed. And doctors just were baffled by it. They had literally no explanation for how it happened. These two miracles have put Carlo on the path to sainthood. In his remarks, Pope Francis urged all of us to learn from Carlos's life, especially how he used the internet and his Eucharistic Miracles website to do good, to spread the gospel to everyone. Carlos's life has inspired millions, including me. Parishes hold prayer groups in his honor, schools are named after him, and his association is building orphanages in Tanzania. Carlos's life has showed me that you don't need to become a martyr, convert a country, or perform these incredible miracles during your life to become a saint. Instead, it's the little things that you do day after day that can bring us on the path to sainthood, and that no matter how ordinary we may seem, we can all become extraordinary in the eyes of God. Thank you. God bless. Click on this video. Hey, maybe you'll like it. Stay prayed up. Bye. See ya. Have a nice day.